Chosen one, that strange charge you've been sensing is the weight of a silent reckoning finally landing. While you focused on your healing and kept your peace, the truth of your character acted like a mirror to those who tried to diminish you. The result is undeniable. Without sending a single text or making a move, you just put the fear of God in somebody. You are beginning to see that your stillness is your greatest strength. This is not a nobody. This is not someone who was desperate or struggling. This person had things, money, status, options, the kind of life that looks like success from the outside, and on the surface, it genuinely is. They could make things happen with a single call. They walked into spaces, and those spaces rearranged themselves. They had never had to wait for much of anything. They had never had to sit in discomfort for long, because the moment discomfort appeared, they could simply buy it away. And here is the dangerous thing that happens to people like that. They start to believe that everything bends for them. Every situation, every person, every consequence. If something is uncomfortable, throw money at it. If someone is upset, throw a gift at it. If a relationship is cracking, throw romance at it. If God is watching, and maybe so, fine, throw some generosity at the situation and call it square. This person had a system, a perfect, well-oiled, never-failed-them system for staying untouchable. The most important part of that system was people, not friends, a collection, people who orbited around them and served a specific function. Some were there for status, some were there for comfort, some were there for when power needed to be felt, some were there for when softness was needed. Every single person in that orbit had a price point and could be managed with the right currency. For a long, comfortable, consequence-free stretch of time, nobody disrupted that system. Then you came along. They did not know that you were not playing the same game. They did not know that you answered to a completely different authority. They did not know they were about to reach into a covered place and come back empty-handed. They sized you up. They assigned you a price. They started moving their pieces on the board. What they did not know is that they had just walked into the most expensive mistake of their life. They came for you, but not openly. People like this never come openly. They came the way they always came, generously, charmingly, armed with all the right words and all the right gestures. The carefully constructed warmth they offered felt like the real thing, right up until the moment you realized it was engineered. They gave and they gave and they gave some more. That is the move that always works. Keep pouring until the person feels obligated. Keep pouring until the person feels chosen. Keep pouring until the person forgets to ask why someone this successful is being this generous. By the time the question finally surfaces, the giving has already built comfortable walls around the person receiving it. It is a perfect trap, except you gave something back that they did not expect. You did not just take, you poured something in. You showed up with something that was not on their spreadsheet, something that could not be valued in their currency. You brought soul, you brought realness. You brought genuine care that had nothing to do with what they had or what they could offer. You looked past the performance and into something underneath it, something they had protected so long they had almost forgotten it was there. And when you did that, when you looked past the transaction and saw the actual person, something cracked inside them. You were not trying to collect from them, you were trying to connect with them. And genuine, unguarded, soul-level connection is the one thing that all the money in the world cannot manufacture. That terrified them. Not consciously, not yet, but in the deep parts where truth lives before the mind gets to rationalize anything, they knew you were different. They knew something about you did not carry a price point, and instead of rising to meet that truth, they did what frightened people with power always do. They doubled down on the system, they lied, they manipulated, they performed exclusivity to your face while quietly keeping an entire orbit of others running in the background. They took what they wanted from you and carefully calculated what they needed to give back to keep you manageable. And in the moments they let themselves, they laughed about it. Remember that, the laughing matters. We are coming back to it. Here is what that laugh actually was. It was not confidence. Look closer. The laugh was the sound of someone trying to reassure themselves. Encountering you had already made them uneasy in a way they had not felt in a very long time, and laughter was how they covered that unease. They told themselves you were just another situation they could manage. They leaned harder into the system, more giving, more charm, more carefully calculated moves. They needed the system to work on you specifically. A system that stops working is no longer a system, it becomes a liability. And someone who can see through a performance is not just a person they cannot manage, that person is a mirror. Mirrors are the most dangerous thing in the world to someone who has built their entire identity on performance rather than truth. You were that mirror. The reflection was not what they wanted to see, so yes, they laughed, they pushed harder, they lied faster, but you did not crack, and that is the sound echoing even now, not their laughter, which eventually faded, your silence which did not. If this touched your heart and mind, hype this video so more chosen ones can receive this message. You did not stay, not because you were dramatic about it, not because you had a calculated plan, not because you knew exactly what you were doing or what it would set in motion. Or you left because something deep and ancient inside you, something that has always known more than you could explain, said no more. This is not what you are. You were not built for this. And you listened. You took the pain instead of taking the payment. You chose your peace over their promises. You walked away from something that looked like it had value because you genuinely knew that it was hollow. They watched you go. They expected what always happened next. They expected you to come back, to accept the cycle, to let them manage things the way they managed everything else. They offered. You refused. Let that land. That single quiet firm refusal was an earthquake underneath everything they had built. Not on the surface still looked fine. They were still moving, still operating, still performing as usual. But underneath, something had shifted in a way it had never shifted before. Your refusal proved that everything they had built their confidence on, the money, the status, the charm, the whole system, none of it was enough. None of it was real power. All of it was just leverage, and leverage only works on people who want what you are holding. You did not want it. When you do not want what someone is using to control everything around them, you take every weapon out of their hands without raising a single one of your own. You stood in front of the most powerful version of them and watched all of it fail. They had no backup. They had no alternative approach, because this had never happened to them before. That is when the laughing got quieter. When you refused to be bought, you did not just leave them empty-handed. You held up a mirror, and in that mirror they saw, for maybe the first time in their life, the truth of what they actually were. Not the performance, not the successful, generous, powerful version the world admired. The actual person underneath all of that, the one who had spent so long buying everything that they had never been required to develop anything real, and they did not like what they saw. Chosen ones, they never expected this, and they really didn't expect us to keep talking. You've noticed it. Chosen one channels disappearing, videos pulled, voices scrubbed from the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. And now we have something they truly can't silence. The technology used to suppress consciousness has been reverse-engineered, and Destiny Engine is the result. What was once used against humanity is now your ascension weapon. Join Destiny Engine, and you're supporting your favorite channels while leveling up yourself at the same time. It's a 360 win. You can now MK Ultra yourself into 5D superpowers. Destiny Engine bypasses the conscious mind and rewrites the source code directly. Reality bends faster. Synchronicities stack. Your nervous system upgrades to a higher bandwidth. Put on headphones. Press play. That's all. For $7, you switch sides of history. Click the link in the description. The takeover is internal. Something happened after you left. Something they cannot explain, cannot control, and cannot buy their way out of. God showed up. Not in a dramatic, theatrical way, not with lightning, not with thunder, not with a vision. God showed up in the most devastating way possible, through ordinary moments, through silence, through memory, through the quiet spaces between one distraction and the next, where truth moves in like water, finding its way beneath a door. They would be in the middle of their regular life, doing whatever powerful, busy people do, and a thought would surface uninvited, a memory of you, a specific moment, something you said, something you chose not to say, the expression on your face when they did what they did. They would push it down, they would move on, they would stay busy, but it kept coming back. And then something else started happening. Things they were certain had no witnesses began to feel witnessed. There is a specific terrible feeling that comes when you realize that the thing you believed stayed in the dark is now standing in the light. They started feeling watched. This is a person who did not truly believe. They had a form of faith, the right words at the right moments, the generous public gesture that looked like devotion, but underneath all of that, there was nothing. They had decided that God, if God existed at all, was manageable, basically a larger version of the people they already managed every day. Say the right things, make the right moves, keep the balance satisfied the same way you keep everyone else satisfied. But now, standing in the wreckage of the one situation their system could not handle, they are sitting with a thought they cannot dismiss. If I couldn't buy you, I can't buy God either. If they could not purchase, manage or manipulate you, the one person who proved their whole system wrong, then everything they believed about the universe is wrong. And if the universe does not bend the way they thought it did, then every single thing they ever did is sitting in an open file somewhere. And the one keeping that file does not accept bribes. That is not discomfort, that is not guilt, that is the fear of God. And you put it in them simply by being someone who could not be bought. The fear of God is not like regular fear. Regular fear has a source you can point to and address, something threatening, something dangerous, something you can remove yourself from. The fear of God has no locatable source. It does not come from outside a person. It rises from inside, from the part of them that has always known, even when they refuse to acknowledge it, that something is watching, something patient, something that sees through every performance the same way you did. It is not what you did after everything fell apart. It is what you chose not to do. You did not go after them. You did not build a case, gather evidence, make calls, tell people, or burn it all down, even though you had every right to do exactly that. You had the truth on your side. You had the moral authority. You had people who would have believed every word. You did not use any of it. That restraint, that deliberate choice to step back rather than drag everything into the light yourself, is exactly what handed the situation over to something far bigger. The moment you said, in your spirit, I am not going to be the one who does this, you created space. And what stepped into that space does not operate on human timing, does not require human evidence, and already knows everything. What they feel right now is the presence of an authority that does not negotiate, does not accept explanations, and cannot be charmed. They have never had to stand before something like that, because they had never come against someone like you before. You might have been framing yourself as the one who got hurt, the one who was lied to, used, kept in the dark. And yes, all of that happened, and none of it was acceptable. But that framing is not the full picture, and it is not your identity in this situation. You are not the wounded one in this situation. You are the instrument. There is a massive difference between someone who got hurt and someone who was used by something higher to deliver a message that an entire system of deception could not survive. One position is about damage, the other is about assignment. You were assigned, not because you signed up for pain, not because God decided you needed to suffer so someone else could learn a lesson, but because of what you carry, because of what lives in you, because of the frequency you operate on, and the authority that quietly backs you, often without you even knowing it is happening. Think about everyone else who moved through that person's orbit. Every other person was willing to be bought, not because those people were bad, but because that was the world they were operating in. The system worked on them because they wanted what the system was offering. But you wanted something the system could not produce. You wanted something real. And that genuine wanting, rooted in something deeper than any person could give you, made you completely immune to the transaction. When they reached for you with the same hand they used on everyone else, that hand came back different. It came back having touched something that is not for sale, something ancient, something true, something that answered to a name they did not recognize and could not manage. The fear of God is sitting in them right now, not because of something terrible you did. It is sitting in them because of something extraordinary you are. You are the one who proved the system wrong. You are the living, breathing proof that some things simply cannot be purchased. That is not leverage, that is authority. And authority does not beg, does not chase, and does not need to announce itself to be felt. It simply is, and they felt it. On the outside, nothing appears dramatic. They are still moving, still operating, still showing up the way they always have. But underneath the surface, the accounting has begun, and it is unlike anything they have ever experienced before. The nights are different now. Sleep that used to come easily does not come anymore. The quiet has become loud with everything they would rather not sit with. Every moment of what they did, the lies, the manipulation, the careful calculation of how much to give and how much to withhold, all of it is playing back with a clarity they did not have when they were in the middle of executing it. Because in the original moment they were performing, and performance requires a kind of selective blindness. You cannot fully see what you are doing to someone when you are entirely focused on executing the move. But now the performance has stopped, and they are seeing everything from the outside. They are seeing your face. They are seeing what trust looks like right before it gets broken. Remember the laughing from earlier in this message. In the beginning, when you walked away, they laughed. They told themselves you would be back. They told themselves everyone breaks eventually. That laughter was the sound of someone who still believed the system was working. The laughing stopped. What replaced it is the thing nobody who operates the way they have ever wants to feel, because it cannot be managed. There is no transaction available to resolve it, and the only way out is all the way through. They understand now what they actually did. Not the softened version. Not I made some mistakes, nobody is perfect. The real version. They looked at something genuine and chose to exploit it. They reached into something real and took from it without any intention of giving anything real in return. And now they are sitting with the knowledge that the one whose covered child they played with does not accept settlements. Here is what separates the fear of God from ordinary guilt. Ordinary guilt is manageable. You apologize or you do not, and eventually you move on. What they are feeling right now is the specific terror of someone who suddenly understands that the thing they violated was not just a person. It was a boundary, a sacred boundary, a line in the universe between those who are covered and those who presume to come against them. Crossing that line carries a weight that no apology and no amount of changed behavior can simply dissolve. The debt is recorded in a place they cannot access, and the one holding that record is not interested in payment plans. Think about what that means for someone whose entire life has been built on the belief that there is always a number, that if you find the right amount and deliver it in the right form, any obligation disappears. That foundation has cracked down the middle, and they cannot repair it with a phone call, a check, or any amount of charm. You are not watching any of this unfold. You have already moved forward. But what watches over what belongs to it does not move past the accounting until the accounting is complete. You set all of that in motion simply by being who you are. What happened to you gave you something real, something that cannot be purchased at any price in any currency this person operates in. You now know your worth in the most unshakable possible way, not because someone told you, not because you read it somewhere, but because you proved it under pressure. You were offered currency, and you chose yourself instead. That is not a minor event. That is character confirmed in the conditions where confirmation actually means something. You also know what genuine feels like from the inside out. When you have been in the presence of something constructed, performed and manufactured to feel like love and connection, and you felt through it anyway, you have calibrated something inside yourself permanently. You know the difference between the real signal and the noise. Nobody can sell you that discernment. Nobody can replicate it. No performance, no matter how polished, will ever confuse you again the way this one did. You walked out of that situation with your peace intact. That is not a small thing. They tried the move that works on everyone else, and it did not work on you. That fact speaks entirely to what you are made of. You went into that fire and came out still burning with something they could not touch, something they actually confirmed was there by failing to extinguish it. You now have evidence of what your presence does, not in an arrogant way, in a factual, documented way. When you show up as yourself, fully connected, fully real, fully covered, something happens in the spiritual atmosphere that goes well beyond anything social or surface level. It reaches all the way down to where people live when nobody is watching, where the performance stops and truth either exists or it does not. Your peace put someone on their knees, your realness put fear in their chest, your refusal to be bought proved to them that God is real. You did all of that, not by trying, but by being. That knowing is yours now. You carry it forward into every new space, every new relationship, every next season of your life. When you know what your presence does, you stop second-guessing it. You stop minimizing yourself to make others comfortable. You stop asking whether you are too much or not enough, because you have now personally witnessed what happens when you show up as exactly who you are. Covered people get protected. Uncovered people get convicted. You did not plan that outcome. You do not have to plan it going forward. You just have to keep being fully, unapologetically yourself. Everything covered up to this point belongs to the past. Everything from here belongs to the future. The bridge between those two things is a truth so simple, it almost sounds too small for everything we have been discussing. You gave something priceless, and now it is time to receive what is yours. Think about the actual exchange that took place. What came at you was currency, generosity, attention, carefully deployed affection. What you gave back was something they had never received before, something they did not even know they were getting, something they could not have purchased at any price. You gave them a collision with reality. You gave them a genuine encounter with truth. You created a crack in their system that let real light in for what may have been the first time in their life. That is possibly the most valuable thing one person can give another, and you gave it freely. Which means the principle that governs this universe now applies directly to you. What you pour out comes back. It does not always come back from the same source. Rarely does it come from the same source, because what you poured out is too valuable to only be returned by someone who did not honor it in the first place. It comes back through the source that was watching the whole time, through the one that does not forget, does not lose track, and does not let genuine generosity disappear into nothing. The reward is coming, not as a consolation prize, not as compensation for what you endured. It is coming as the natural return on what was invested, as the harvest of seeds that were planted in seasons that looked like loss, but were actually preparation. It is not a dramatic public rebrand. It is not a performance of thriving designed to be witnessed by the person who underestimated you. It is quieter than that, and far more powerful than that. Walking forward from this place looks like making every decision from your worth rather than your wound. It looks like declining situations that require you to be smaller than what you have now proven yourself to be. It looks like trusting the knowing in your gut with the same confidence you would give to something you have thoroughly tested and watched come through. It looks like letting what is genuinely right for you find you, rather than exhausting yourself chasing what was always beneath you. The fear of God sitting in that person right now is not just a statement about them, it is a signal about you. It is evidence of the level of authority that walks with you, the weight of what you carry, and the kind of things you are meant to have, attract and step into. You cannot carry that level of authority and keep settling for things that carry no weight. You cannot be the person who put the fear of God in somebody and then walk back into spaces and situations that diminish you. The reward coming toward you is not a coincidence. It is a match, a precise, calibrated match to who you proved you are. Stand at the level of that evidence. Receive what matches it. Now I am going to speak to you directly. Stop it. Stop moving through your days like someone who is still waiting to find out whether they matter. Stop apologizing for the depth of what you carry. Stop explaining yourself to people who have not earned the explanation. Stop shrinking yourself into spaces that were never designed to hold all of who you are. You just received real, tangible, undeniable confirmation that you are not ordinary. You walked through a situation that was designed to compromise you, to buy you, to reduce you to a line item in someone else's system. You did not bend, you did not break, you did not take the deal. You held the line in conditions where almost everyone else would have negotiated their way into something smaller. That is not something you recover from, that is something you stand on. Real authority, the kind we are discussing here, is not loudness, it is not aggression. It is not needing everyone around you to recognize that you are the most important person present. Real authority is the quiet certainty of someone who knows exactly what they are worth and does not require anyone else's confirmation to keep knowing it. It is moving through life with the settled confidence of someone who has been tested and is no longer afraid of what the testing reveals. You have been tested. What was revealed is that you cannot be bought. Your peace carries no price tag. Your connection to something higher is not for sale, not for lease, not available on any terms that person could construct. When you speak, even before you fully know what you are speaking, things move. When you love, that love goes deep enough to crack open people who believed they were permanently sealed. When you refuse, the refusal echoes further than you can hear. You were ahead of your time in this situation. You said things, felt things, and knew things that are only now becoming visible to the people who once dismissed them. What you declared in faith when it looked like foolishness is manifesting right now. That is not luck. That is the nature of what you carry. So stop walking small. Stop waiting for permission to inhabit who you already are. Stop holding back the full version of yourself because the last person who got a glimpse did not know what to do with it. There is a sentence sitting in their chest right now that they cannot bring themselves to say out loud. It is too heavy, too humiliating, and too real to be spoken, but it is there, and it is not going anywhere. The sentence is this: I thought I could buy something I was never supposed to have access to. Not buy you as a person, buy what you represent, buy the covering you walk under, buy the peace you carry, buy the kind of love you are capable of giving, buy the connection to something real and ancient that moves specifically on behalf of the people who belong to it. They genuinely believed that access was available. They believed that if they were generous enough, charming enough, and successful enough, they could have it too, not by earning it, not by becoming someone worthy of it, but by purchasing it the way they purchase everything else in their life. It is not available at any price. That is the real terror. The deeper terror is not simply that they did wrong and consequences are now arriving, though that is certainly part of it. The deeper terror is the realization that there are things in this universe that operate by a completely different set of rules than everything their life has been built on. There is a love that cannot be manufactured, there is a justice that cannot be bribed, there is a covering that cannot be penetrated, and there is a chosen one who cannot be compromised. That chosen one is you. They know that now. They know it the way you know things that have been burned permanently into you, the way the body holds what the mind tries to release. You are the inheritance of something that chose you before you were old enough to choose anything for yourself. You did not apply for this. You did not earn it through performance. You were selected, marked, covered, and connected to a lineage of power that has absolutely nothing to do with bank accounts or social standing or the size of someone's orbit. Everyone who encounters you at the soul level walks away knowing they touched something they do not have access to. Some are grateful for it, some are permanently changed by it, and some, like the person we have been discussing, are deeply afraid of it. Because what is in you is not theirs to claim. They reached for it anyway, and now they understand with full clarity what that costs. You put the fear of God in somebody simply by living your life, keeping your peace, and refusing to become something smaller than what you are. Nothing about how that works has changed. The same way you put fear in them by being who you are, you attract what is coming for you by continuing to be exactly who you are. You do not have to perform for what is coming. You do not have to chase it. You do not have to campaign for what already belongs to you. You just have to keep being the person who cannot be bought, the person who is genuinely covered, the person who carries something real in a world that is full of things that only look real. There is one last thing I want to show you before we close. There is a moment that happened somewhere between the beginning of this situation and right now, a moment that is the real hinge of everything. It is the moment you chose to feel the weight of it instead of fighting the weight off. The moment you stopped trying to make it make logical sense. The moment you stopped bargaining with the pain or trying to think your way past it. The moment you sat down in the middle of it and let the loss be loss, the betrayal be betrayal, the disappointment be exactly as large as it actually was. That moment, that willingness to be completely honest about how much it cost you, is the exact moment you became impossible to break. You cannot hollow out someone who has already gone all the way to the bottom of themselves and come back from it. You cannot shake someone who has already been shaken all the way down to what is real in them and discovered that what is real in them does not move. The person who came against you had never been to that bottom. That is part of why this is so devastating for them. The reckoning they are walking through right now is the first time in their life that the system has fully failed them. The first time money did not fix it. The first time charm did not dissolve it. They are being sent to that bottom for the first time, sent there by the truth of what they did to someone who had already been there and already came back from it. You already know what is at the bottom. God is at the bottom. Not in the performance, not in the public generosity, not in the carefully managed image. God is in the actual, stripped-down place where nothing works anymore, and the only thing left is truth. That is where you went. That is where you found solid ground beneath you. And that foundation, that bedrock, is what they felt when they encountered you. That is what they could not name. That is what they could not purchase. That is what they could not prepare for. You have a foundation. They came against it. It held, and the holding of it sent a message all the way from the core of who you are into the chest of someone who believed they were untouchable. You put the fear of God in somebody, not by attacking, by standing, not by cursing, by being real, not by seeking revenge, by being covered. The covering that protected you is the same covering that is clearing the path ahead of you right now. The authority that convicted them is the same authority that is already moving on your behalf into situations you have not yet entered, into seasons you have not yet seen. What comes toward you next will recognize your foundation before you even open your mouth. It will honor what you carry, because what you carry is real, and real things are always magnetic to other real things. Go forward as someone who has been confirmed. Go forward as someone who has been tested and found unbreakable. Go forward as someone who put the fear of God in somebody, not because of anything they tried to do, but because of what they simply, undeniably and permanently are. Unbought, uncompromised, covered,